I'm going to start things here and welcome everyone to our webinar today. I'm Karen Groh. I'm the President and CEO at the Lebanon Valley Chamber of Commerce, your host for today. We're so excited to have this presentation as a partnership with SCORE. SCORE is an amazing organization that does so much for the Chamber and our business community, providing mentoring, free business mentoring to entrepreneurs and businesses and nonprofits throughout Lancaster and Lebanon County. So if you want more information about SCORE, visit lancaster.score.org. They are the Lebanon and Lancaster County branch, and an amazing group of people. So feel free to look up more information about SCORE. And so today's presentation is going to be recorded. If you wanted to go back, I will make sure that everybody who is registered has a link to watch the recording in case you missed something, maybe you get interrupted in the middle of this. Or something what was gone over too quickly. So keep that in mind. I will also be monitoring the chat window. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to pop them in there. If they're appropriate to be answered at the time, I'll make sure that they are brought up. And at the end of the webinar, we will open it up for audio questions. So if you're on a phone or you are unable to chat something in the chat, put something in the chat window, we will open it up for you to unmute and ask a question then as well. So at this time, I would like to introduce our presenter today. Her name is Beverley Doody, and she's a certified professional coach, and training facilitator, specializing in executive leadership, women in leadership, emerging leaders, team dynamics, and career transition. And I think that we're in for a really great presentation today on managing talent in a post-COVID world. Beverley, it's your turn.
Great, thank you. We'll just pull up the presentation, but good morning, everybody, on this glorious morning. A little bit cold, colder than we're used to, but really excited to be with you all today. So, Kathy, if you could bring up the slide, that would be great to get us kicked off. And I want to say a few things right up front. Firstly, this is one of a number of programs that SCORE's been delivering over the past 12 months. It won't have escaped anyone's notice that where we are now is such a different place from where we were 12 months ago, and that's an understatement to be sure. So SCORE has helped in a number of areas, including helping people with government loans and assistance, PPE, you name it, we've tried to help with that. And this webinar today is around how do we manage our talent when it comes to dealing with what is really a huge crisis. So firstly, a few things I would like to get out of the presentation, which might sound a bit strange to you guys. But for those of you who don't know SCORE, I hope this is the start of a beautiful relationship with SCORE. And right at the end of the presentation, you'll see the link to connect with SCORE. For those of you that do know SCORE and do have a mentor with SCORE, great, welcome. We're very, very pleased to serve you and work with you. And I'm hoping that post this webinar, we can continue the conversation. We really do have a number of great tools that we'll share that you can use at your leisure to help you as you make decisions around your business and your people. So a bit about me. As you can probably tell, I'm not from around these parts. Moved over here 6.5 years ago with my company at the time. And I've had a 35-year career all told in human resources. So a whole range of things from compensation and benefits to talent acquisition to strategic leadership to M&A. I was very blessed to have a lot of different experiences. I am also a small business owner. So I've seen my business change over the past 12 years as well, 12 months rather. And I've been involved with SCORE now just coming up for 2 years, which has been a really exciting situation for me. So if we go into the agenda slide, I just want to take you through what we're talking about. So we understand how the flow is going to go with the webinar. So setting the scene, where are we, what's happening, and what's the business impact? We're also then going to go into a whole section around managing your talent. And having had a background in HR, I feel passionately about leadership and how your role throughout this pandemic is critical to how you engage and keep and retain and attract talent to your businesses. We're going to talk a little bit about planning your talent needs, a little bit about how you build a talent pool, hiring the right people. I've often said in my career, you can have the best manufacturing plans, marketing plans, whatever plans, but without the people to make it happen, you don't really have a plan at all. So how we get the right people on board to help us build our businesses, how we build the offer, and then how we foster ongoing engagement with the team. And then there will be a couple of things in the appendices that I think you'll find as very, very useful tools. There's an Excel file that helps you make decisions around, can I afford more talent? How do I drive that talent decision? And also a very interesting questionnaire where you just sort of work through it yourself in terms of what do I see in the next 6 to 12 months? How has my business changed? What do I need to pivot to accomplish, and so on. So I'm hoping you walk away with some very practical tools from this webinar as well. So moving on to the next slide, and I'm not going to dwell a lot on this slide. When I first was asked to put a presentation together, it was in February of last year. February of last year was a very, very different world to February of this year. So I went from this slide to the next slide, where I put a great big cross through it. I had to rethink the whole presentation. So going on to the following slide, we're starting to look at some of the challenges that we're having in our local communities. There's been a lot of job loss. There's been enormous change, not just through the pandemic, but with the protests for social injustice and so on. The world is a really, really different place. So moving on to the next slide, I just want to take a moment to really help you think through what has changed. So when you reflect on your own businesses, do you have now new products, new services, new ways of doing things? Maybe you've got a completely new business model. You certainly, I'm sure, got a new cost structure. What we did before is probably not going to work with what we need to do now. So a lot of self-reflection, a lot of an analysis about our businesses. What has this meant for our employees? There's that vision I had in my mind with mum and dad at home, trying to both work with a couple of kids. They're trying to get onto an overcrowded internet to study, the dog's barking in the background, the plumber's just arrived to sort out the washing machine. It's really chaotic, and it has had a huge impact on every individual that you employ. Obviously, safety, health, and welfare are key considerations. The actual welfare, the benefit, the well-being of people is really critical. A lot of us working remotely still, and some of us may never come back to an office. The world of work has completely changed. There are additional stresses that people are going through. And also people are having to pivot themselves. And not only are businesses having to change, but maybe we need new skills now. Maybe we need to cross-train. Maybe we found that our technology skills aren't good enough. Perhaps we've got new work. The old work has gone and will not come back. So you as leaders are really doing a change leadership role, which is critical to your success in your business. So let's talk about you. The bad news is you have a lot on your shoulders. The good news is you can really make a difference to how your people engage with you as we work through this time of turbulence. And we'll be giving some tips as we go further through the presentation on this. And also there's the toll on you as well. You've got to be the one who can see the vision. You've got to be the one who can be honest and acknowledge how people are feeling, but also provide hope. And you probably need some new skill sets too in order to deliver those things. Apart from the personal cost, and of course the personal cost has been huge. We see that every day in the reporting of numbers that have been impacted, either unfortunately deaths or infections. But what's happened in terms of work priorities. Did we find that actually we've been doing a lot of non-value added work, and we've always done it because that's the way we've always done it, and we've never questioned it. So if there is a glimmer of hope in terms of the whole human tragedy here, maybe there's an opportunity for us to be smarter about how we do go to business, how we do change the world of work within our companies moving forward. So I'd ask you to think about what's actually worked well for you with the change. What hasn't worked? What will you keep doing once we finally emerge from COVID? And of course, how do you rescale and grow your business again in this uncertain world? So we go to the next slide. This is one of the few times, or we'll get onto that in a moment. Sorry, I've jumped ahead in my own mind. I want to take you back again 12 months. Who would have thought we'd be talking about disinfectant, plexiglass, people wearing masks, social distancing, picking up your food from the restaurant, touch points, social distancing, curbside. My goodness, I wish I'd been in the manufacturing business for masks and wipes. My goodness, that's really sailed away. But these have been real concerns with people, and it's been very, very challenging. So we move to the next slide. This is one of the few times, and I'm hoping we have the right numbers here. Kathy, you'll tell me if we haven't. This is one of the few times when I actually let people use their phones when I'm doing a presentation, I say in a jokey way. So if you go onto your phone and if you go into www.menti.com, you'll be asked to enter a code. And you
Beverley, the code is different. It's 9105424.
Right, okay. So go into www.menti.com and enter that code, and then you will be able to answer this question, type that in, and like magic, it will appear on the screen. So what is your most pressing concern about managing your talent in this economic climate? And we'll wait for it to populate a little bit. This is when you have your moment of angst and you think, oh my gosh, it's not working, but I'm sure it will be. I have faith. Aha, some words are starting to come in. Okay. So keeping revenue coming, emotional wellness of employees, keeping customers safe, yeah, keeping the team safe, retaining talent, now I know there are a number of you on the call, so I'm going to keep this going so we have a few more coming up. So any more for any more? Here we go. Yeah, safety. Safety is absolutely huge. Getting new talent, acquiring new talent, mental health, absolutely huge as well. What I've found personally in the last 12 months, there's just been so much noise on all fronts. A simple walk and literally going to smell the roses has really helped me just decompress sometimes and get away from all the noise. So yeah, so we've got here then keeping the customer safe, mental health, overcoming fear, yeah, safety of members, employee needs, acquiring new talent, keeping new talent, maximizing opportunities, safety of members. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, great. So let's go back to the presentation. Here we go. So a lot of things coming through there where people have a lot of anxiety, and how on earth do we navigate through these challenges? And I said right at the start in the agenda that the challenge is for you as leaders. And I don't know how many of you have vision, mission, and values as part of your legal setup, your legal entity setup. It's really at times like these where your vision, your mission, and your values are not just written on paper or on your website. This becomes the code of conduct that we use as we make some very tough people decisions. So what is vision, mission, values? It's your overarching purpose of the business, it's your ethical principles, and it's your values. There have been a number of companies, and I won't name them because it's not fair to do so, who have actually shown that their vision, mission, and values were just that, written on paper, and have not actually been adhered to during this crisis. And on the other side, there are a number where they've actually said, actually, this is our playbook. We're going to go back to that. We're going to make our decisions based on the values and the purpose of our business, and we're going to be very transparent with our employees. So I would ask you to ask yourselves, how are you living to your values? Are you doing that for your organization? Do you need to change your values? Are you really doing that? Do your actions match your values? So moving on to sort of bring that out in a bit further with our next slide. When you are looking at managing your talent, we spoke about leadership and we spoke about planning your talent. When we looked at the Menti slide, it said, you know, we're concerned about mental well-being, we're concerned about safety, we're concerned about stress, we're concerned about uncertainty. And there's just some simple guidance here to think about in terms of how you're having those conversations with your people. Don't be afraid to address the employee and customer safety and emotional concerns head on. There was a thinking in the past that, oh, I don't want to get involved in people's, private lives when I'm a leader. In times like this, asking people how they are and really meaning it and doing a check-in with them emotionally is really important, and acknowledging that, yes, these are tough times. We're going to find a way together to navigate through. What you have to do as well in leadership is make sure that you're making the right decisions for your company. And that could be that you have to make some tough decisions about whether people stay, whether you can afford them or not, or whether with the change in work and the nature of work, whether you have people who don't have the right skills to be employed with your business. So being open, being transparent, skilling up where you can, having those conversations in line with your values are really important. Before we get to some very tough decisions though, I would ask you to think very flexibly about how we can think about people in jobs and people working for your companies. There are options to be more flexible in how we engage people. And having a conversation with people openly about that can mean the difference between actually losing someone that you don't want to lose and keeping that skill set, albeit maybe in a more part-time basis, until you're able to grow again with your business. The other thing we ask you to think about is when you look at your business, what are the scenarios you need to plan for? What's the most realistic scenario? Looking at where we are now, looking 6-12 months ahead, what might be a better scenario and what would be the best scenario? And really getting granular in your business plan about what does that look like in those three different scenarios. And then what does it mean for your talent? The big question, when it comes to sustaining income, what can the business afford? And again, when you get to the appendix, you'll see a really great planning sheet there that you can start playing with numbers on as you start to think about, how do I scale up? How do I still scale down? How do I be careful in growing my business? A crisis is a time when you have to confront certain things. Maybe you haven't had that honest conversation with somebody about their performance. And times are tough, but you have to be in survival mode. And maybe you have to have that conversation with that employee who had been coasting for a while and re-explain to them what you need from them. And then maybe if they can't or won't deliver, have a conversation about whether they're in the right slot. Also think about the cross-training options. A lot of us have very small businesses and we have to wear many hats. How can we develop our employees into other areas so that we can reinvent, we can re-innovate in how we manage our workflow so that we can keep things moving? And I would say to you also, how you communicate with your employees is critical. How often you listen. Communication is two-way. How you share, what you share, and what vision you can paint. And you may have found that going into crisis mode, you found some gaps that the pandemic uncovered in your company that you hadn't thought about before. So moving on to the next slide, Kathy, if you would. I did some research on 3 pretty well-known publications here, just to get a feel for what other organizations are doing with regard to managing their talent during this COVID, now that COVID is here and is very much here. So when you get the copy of the presentation, these are live URL links. Do click on them, and it gives you some ideas about what to expect as we start to emerge from COVID, how we can still build effective remote teams during the pandemic and beyond, and how you can actually prepare your organization, your business for emergence. So 3 really interesting articles that I found that I wanted to share with you. If we go on to the next slide, I just wanted to talk about how 2020 has made us think very differently and challenged our paradigms. A number of years ago, when I was working in Europe, I wrote a working from home policy. And I worked for an American company, very well known, Lancaster-based American company. And the reaction I got was, oh, that'll never work over here. What? People working at home? If I can't see them, I can't trust them. What do you mean? No, that can't possibly work. We can't build teams remotely. It's not possible. They're going to be sitting there watching a soap in the afternoon. They're not going to be able to do the job, etc., etc. And one thing I would just say out there is that 2020 has completely debunked that theory. We have found that actually we can trust our employees. We can show empathy to our employees. They can be very effective. And we can also build and be very intentional about building virtual teams. So if we've learned anything through the pandemic, and again, I'm not underplaying the severity of the pandemic, we've learned to actually challenge ourselves to think differently. And let's extend that to all aspects of our business, our small business, and how we think about things. So I'd like to go to the next Mentipoll now. And again, Kathy will take us into the other screen. And this is around new leadership attributes that you think we need to manage in this climate. So what do leaders need now to be more effective in this climate? And this will come up in just a moment. Here we go. So if you go and use your phones again and enter the code there, 9105 424. So what new leadership attributes do you need in this climate? And like magic, these words will appear. She says with bated breath. Here we go. Yeah, care, emotion to empowerment. Yes, I love that one. Grace, oh, fantastic. Agility, very much so. Relational awareness, flexibility, love it, outside the box thinking. Equity, ignore history. Allow employees to think. Oh yes, strong communication, compassion, absolutely. Listening skills, emotional intelligence. Humanity, yeah. Yes, change management and change leadership is absolutely critical. And when you look at this, we think about our businesses and we tend to think about them with hard numbers. The people side of things, the softer skills, as we tend to call them, are often the more important when it comes to retaining, attracting, and developing our employees. If we as leaders can show these skills, we can actually have a very motivated workforce, ones that can see that we're going through tough times and put the extra, go the extra mile for us. What you find when you look at employee engagement studies, employees that are engaged in an organization are 17% more effective than employees that are not engaged in an organization. And when we think about, career coaching, I do career coaching in my private life as well. A lot of companies are asking employees or potential employees, what have you done throughout the pandemic to keep your skills fresh, to keep trying to find a job, et cetera, et cetera. And I would pose the other question. If I'm a candidate coming for a job at your company, I would want to know what you did to manage your employees through this really difficult time. Did you just do a knee-jerk and cut people off and lay people off? Did you have a communication strategy? Did you try to work through changes in working practices that could help retain skills? How did you manage it? So it's a two-way question. What did you do to help manage your business and your employees in particular through this crisis? Great, let's move on to the next slide. Thank you, Kathy. And I would say everyone needs a Kathy in their lives. She's helping doing all the behind the scenes stuff. So I really appreciate that. So we'll get the presentation back in a moment. Here we go. Okay. So moving on. Let's get into the right slide. I think it's slide 14, Kathy. Here we go. Yep. So it's often said that when we're in a crisis, it's the real revealer. And it shows the importance of good leadership. Now, there's a certain person on this call that I won't call out by name, but I've used the example before and he knows who he is. And let me just give you a tip. I used to work for him at Armstrong. We were working in Europe and we were working in a business unit that was failing and it wasn't meeting its numbers. And it came to the annual time when people were expecting pay increases. And this leader, we had a European leadership meeting. We were sitting in this conference room in a hotel. And this leader, who was a great leader and is still a great leader, came in and said, right, everyone's going to have a beer. We thought, great. It wasn't the morning. It was the end of the day. So we all sat there. We all had a beer together, probably about 30 of us. And he sat there and he said, now I need to tell you guys why we won't be getting a pay increase this year. The business isn't performing. We're the leaders of the business. And how do we justify taking a pay increase when we're not delivering the results? And I can tell you, as somebody who was in that meeting, the way in which that message was delivered was electric. And everyone, to a person, everyone said, we get it. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We have to earn our increase. And the message was a tough message to listen to, but it was the how the message was delivered. And that makes all the difference with how you interact with your employees and how you work with your employees. So during a time of crisis, this is when the real leaders come to the fore. And you don't have to have people that you manage to be a leader. A leader is how you decide to turn up every day. Anybody can be a leader and they have choice about how they turn up. So leadership is critical to adapt to difficult business situations. Top-notch leadership skills become even more important in these times. And good leaders see the opportunity and they don't shy away from tough subjects. Have the conversations, but have them in line with your vision, your mission, and your values. And, good leaders are committed to their people. So if we move into the next slide, there's just a few things here that is not an all-encompassing list. But I was working with a group of people, and we were talking about what does it mean to be a leader? And the words in blue are the words that I think are even more important in 2020 and into 2021. Empathy, that came out on the Menti poll. Visionary, we've got to be able to show people that there is a path forward. Even if it may be a tough path, there's a path forward. Ethics in everything, not just when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to the protests and the social injustice that we've been seeing. Candor is so important as a leader. Valuing diversity, creating a relationship of trust, being courageous and saying sometimes, I don't know all the answers, but together we'll work it through. Showing vulnerability, being agile, an active listener, again, embracing diversity, and also caring and modeling self-care. We can get so engrossed with what's going on that we forget to literally smell the roses. And actually saying to people, these things that we have with us, these phones, you can turn them off. You can close the door, figuratively speaking, on work and actually spend some time with your family now. So really thinking about what's important in 2020 and 21 in terms of leadership is pretty critical. So taking that into the next slide, I want to have that in mind as you think about your talent. So what we've found is that we're homeworking, we can trust people. Demonstrating empathy and kindness builds connection with people. Leading with transparency and being transparent about what we don't know, as well as what we do know, builds trust. You know what it's like if there's a communication vacuum, you're always going to get someone who's going to make something up. So even if you don't know, say, I don't know, work with you. Showing resilience. Okay, we are dealing with tough times. Okay, what can we do? What we can do about it? And then being the champion of change. And, I do a lot of leadership work, and this quote I really think is fantastic. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So a good leader is critical to employee well-being and performance. Okay, moving into the next slide here. We want to start thinking about talent pools. It actually is still fairly challenging to hire some people, which might sound extraordinary. I know, Valonda, you're on the call here, and this is your business, hiring people, but still getting the right talent in the right way is critical, and it's still difficult. So I would ask you to think about networking. We can do this through LinkedIn, we can do this through websites, we can do this through social media. I'm actually going to be doing 2 more presentations in February and March on how to get a nice LinkedIn profile. So if you're interested in that, let me know, we can send you details. I'm doing it through PA CareerLink. Speed of response when dealing with people. People are judging you all the time. If someone is in contact with you, please get back to them quickly, even if it's a no. One of my bugbears when I worked with my former company was other companies not even responding, and that's a common courtesy when it comes to people. How can you manage your local brand? So you can have a great LinkedIn profile. You can have a presence locally. Maybe there's still some charity work you could do. Perhaps you can sponsor, perhaps you can build an alliance with an organization. What local community involvement can you do? Your local brand really matters when it comes to how you attract people in this community. I'm going to have a separate slide on flexible hiring options, but we can look at temporary employees, we can look at part-time employees, we can look at contractors, and I'll go through the difference in those later. Also think about students on traineeships. What partnerships do you have with our local colleges? I know they're often crying out to get opportunities for their students. And I believe Millersville is actually going to require all of their students, I think in their 3rd year, to do some placements. Could that be a potential source of talent for you, both for now and for the longer term? And also there's talent hidden in plain sight. And what do I mean by that? There are some people who have had maybe a checkered past. And there are some great programs where people have been rehabilitated and they are supported to get back into the workforce. Why wouldn't we consider somebody. I mean, I know I've made mistakes in the past. Has anyone on this webinar never made a mistake? So let's think smart about building that talent pool. You are the brand of your company, and every interaction you have with the community and with people in your community makes a difference. So moving on to the slide I promised around employee versus contractor. And I'll say right up front, I know it's a really, really busy slide. So I've broken all the rules of presentation and I own it, but I wanted you to have this in front of you. It comes down to control. So an employee is someone that you are instructing what to do. You control their hours, you control the work they do, you provide the tools that they use, you most likely give them some sort of benefits package, you are directing them. When it comes to the independent contractor, you do not direct them. You buy services from them for a period of time. They will pay their own income taxes, their own employment insurance and other income-related deductions. They will pay their own operating costs. They will supply their own tools. They will be held liable for losses of profit, damage to equipment, and so on. So there's a clear difference between being an employee and being a contractor. Now, when it comes to thinking about hopefully being able to scale up or manage during this period, you can talk to your employees about, part-time, you can talk about full-time, you can talk about seasonal. There are options that you can talk to your employees about. But when you're an employee, you are the one doing the directing. You can get into hot water if you think you can employ an independent contractor and then direct them completely. They will be classed legally as an employer, and you don't want to go down that route. So again, when you get the copy of the presentation, you'll see the link there, the IRS link for small businesses, self-employed versus independent contractor. So there's some additional help for you there. Okay, moving on to the next slide here. This is just an example of what you can do. So if you're not skilled in HR, and when you run a small business, you're everything. As we say in the UK, you're the chief cook and bottle washer. So you get the talent, you interview the talent, you get the business, you clean the bathrooms, you do the accounting, you do the marketing, you do the whole lot. This is just a simple way that you might think about if you're really wanting to hire somebody, starting to think about what you need and how to match people that are coming in as applications to what you said you need. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's just a handy sort of way of framing it out and keeping yourself honest. If I look at the yellow column, if you're calling people for interview, did they meet what you said you wanted them to have? And why are you interviewing people that don't meet the skill sets you said you need? So just a little reference guide there. Moving on to the next slide, hiring the right people. There are some questions that you can ask to help around teamwork, around ability to adapt, big one at the moment, around time management, around communication skills, motivation skills, and initiative during the pandemic. Why am I focusing on these questions? What I'm trying to get at is behavioral interviewing. We can look at a resume, we can see they've got a certificate for driving a forklift truck. We can look at a resume, we can see what their education was. We can see they've had 5 jobs in the last 4 years, whatever it might be. But when it comes to culture and fit, it's about how they connect with others in the workplace. So here are just some examples of how you can ask more open-ended questions to get a measure for how people are going to actually be in the workplace and how they're going to align with your culture. Okay. And I do have some additional questions that I'm happy to send on to Karen to send out afterwards that you could use as an interviewing guide when you're interviewing talent. Moving on to the next page, this one I saw, I think I saw it on Facebook, talk about social media. But when it comes to soft skills, we forget this. We want people who are going to be on time. We want people who are going to make an effort, who have high energy, have a positive attitude, are passionate about what they're doing, have good body language, are coachable, do a little extra, are prepared and have a strong work ethic. So I would often spend a lot of time myself in my talent acquisition days on hiring for soft skills. A lot of the other stuff can be taught, but if you don't have a right match to your organization, it can be critical, particularly in a smaller business where one person that doesn't fit as well can be very, very difficult. Okay, so moving on to, we've now hired the right person. What do we do? How do we build the offer? And again, I would suggest, there are some great resources on our school website about what it means to be an employer of people. So what can the business afford? What is the market rate of pay? There are some great websites. If you look at things like salarylist.com, salary.com, indeed.com, comparably.com, you can get a feel for the local market. If I look at salarylist.com, I can actually pull it into sort of the Philadelphia, Harrisburg area and get quite specific about what recent job offers have been. So it's worth having a look at. That's one outside in view you can look at. You need to do the maths also about what you can afford and when. And sometimes starting on that part-time flexible basis helps you as you see how that income flow continues. Think about how you reward people. Maybe it's on, company performance. So I'm happy to share with you when we're successful, and I will give you a salary when we're not successful. Looking at sign-on bonuses, that can work really well as well. Maybe you've got someone who's on the brink of deciding whether they want to come with you or not. Perhaps they're going to give up a sales incentive somewhere else that they've got. So that can be another option to think about. I often suggest doing it with a payback clause. So you pay it maybe after 3 months, and if they leave in the meantime, you want the money back. Time off in lieu of overtime. Often a small business will give paid time off first because it's probably the cheaper of benefits that you can give. Home working, when I wrote this, we weren't working at home and we are now, but maybe that's going to continue for a lot of people. Flexi time, one of our school clients does a great job around saying, I want you to go to your child's school holiday show, whatever it might be, when the kids are back in school. And that's fine if that's in the middle of the day, because I know you'll do the extra hours when you come back, you'll make up the time. And just low cost thank yous can be part of a very important package. Now you can start to think about hard and fast benefits. My concern is always to say, once you put them in, it's very hard to get them out, and they're expensive. So go carefully, make sure you've done your numbers, and you'll see the sheet in the back in the appendix to work out what you can afford with that 401k. And it may be that you carve out an amount of money per year that you put to the employee that they can spend as they wish in terms of what's important to them. As you plan for the future, think about how your business is going to grow. Think about the type of employee you're likely to hire, because that employee, might help you think through what you may want to offer in terms of the benefit. Okay, moving on to ongoing engagement. So you've made your decisions, you've found the talent, you've hired the talent. It doesn't stop there. In order for people to feel that they're part of the organization, onboarding is very, very important, and setting some goals. What do you want the person to be able to achieve in 30, 60, 90 days? Regular touch points. There are some great guides out there on the internet on how to onboard people virtually now. I like free. Free is good for me. And I do a lot of searching on the internet, and there's been some great guides that you can pull on that help you really build what you want to get across to your employees. Do try and budget some money for development. There's a staggering number here that 94% of people said they would stay with their company if it invested in their development. And that doesn't mean fancy, week-long stays in hotels that cost you thousands of dollars. It can be as simple as asking them to attend a webinar, sitting by Nelly, as we say in the UK, to learn some new skills. But do plan development experiences for your employees. Maintain communication. Communication is not just during the pandemic. What's your cadence of communication? How do you make it two-way? How do you listen as much as you talk? And then recognition. Sometimes just a simple, heartfelt, detailed piece of recognition makes all the difference. And there's a quick formula that we recommend, or I've recommended in my HR career, the SBI formula, the situation, the behavior, and the feedback. So Kathy, when you said to me that you were going to be my wingman to drive this presentation today, I can't tell you how fantastic it is to know that I'm in safe hands. And I just want to thank you for your time today. It's most appreciated. Now I'm hoping that Kathy has fainted on the floor there with glee about, some recognition, but, heartfelt recognition makes all the difference. And the thing that I like about Richard Branson, and you obviously know Richard Branson from Virgin, but clients don't come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your clients. And for someone who's had a career in HR, that's been very, very important to me. So if we move on to sort of a sort of summing up slide, a few things I want to say here first. What got you here may not get you there. We've all had to change and pivot and think differently about our world of work. Some companies are absolutely thriving, some are not. So we've had to think very, very differently and pivot. When you're making your decisions, be true to your company purpose and values. That I think is absolutely critical. Pay attention to your employees' needs, well-being, welfare, health, the safety of your employees and customers, absolutely critical. Adapt your operating model for today's business and think about where the growth is going to come from. How can we both sustain the income and start to grow the income? And when it comes to talent, it is available, but be intentional. You want the right talent with the right skills, with the right work ethic, with the right positions. And there you'll see contact details. Obviously, at the moment, the website is the easier place to go in this virtual world that we live in. But we have mentors at the ready, very, very willing to connect with you and help you through some of these decisions that you may be making. And we have a plethora of tools that we can help guide you through as you work through these very, very challenging times. So do look out for the round tables we do and other things that we're working on. I do just want to give a little bit of a plug. A lot of female businesses, female-owned businesses, and particularly women of colour businesses, have been adversely impacted during the pandemic. And at SCORE, we're working to create a professional women's network where we will be putting on topics around challenges that female businesses have, so that we can build a network in the community and support each other through these times. We're really excited about this. We're planning 2 events this year, more to come. I see Trisha's on the call. She's going to be an outside in person to give us some good tips as to what we should be looking for. But there's more to come, and we're very much here to serve you. So with that, I'm going to pause. And Karen, maybe ask if there's any Q&A.
Thank you so much, Beverly. That was amazing. We did have a few comments, not necessarily questions, but one of the comments was that they were interested in upcoming webinars. So I think we can certainly make sure that information is shared on that. If anyone, Bryn Mason from Lebanon Valley College, who's actually a board member for the Chamber, says that if anyone is interested in connecting with Lebanon Valley College to hire part-time, full-time, or interns, feel free to email her. She has her email in there. She works in the Breen Career Center at Lebanon Valley College, and she would love to have the connections.
Great.
And Valanda has posted that sometimes your payroll company can provide you statistics of their database on pay based on industry and area of the country. So there was just some comments in there. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute, and don't jump off yet if you think that we're at the end, because we do have a poll and we definitely want some feedback from you before you leave. But does anybody have any questions that you want to unmute and ask?
I think I've stunned them, Karen.
I think you actually did a phenomenal job in answering their questions.
Maybe
Yeah, providing.
somebody can share an experience that they've had and how they've had, what experiences
Yeah.
have you had during the pandemic that you might want to share?
I think we've got a shy bunch in the house, Kathy.
Hey,
Is that right?
this is Craig with Belco Community Credit Union. How you doing, everybody?
Nice to see you.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of experiences, I think you touched on a lot of things here, Beverly. I think during this time, everybody's had to adapt. I mean, we had a really good year in our business. I work for a credit union, and financial services was really good despite some of the challenges that the pandemic offered. Now, we were kind of preparing in a lot of ways leading up to it, but some of the challenges, obviously, I think were, mental challenges that we've seen with some of our folks, dealing with the stresses of, everything that was going on in the past year. And I think you touched on a lot of things of just being open, allowing people to, express themselves, but then giving them that freedom to, if they needed to take some time away, we were flexible with those things. From a member perspective, I know a lot of members were kind of disappointed that they couldn't come into a branch, but adapted really well to using some of the self-services, and we kind of helped them through that and realizing that, hey, we still have a business to run and to be able to provide them with a platform for that business, and to navigate their finances, and how could they do that without, going into a branch. I think adaptability was kind of real key, and there were some challenges along the way, as we all have experienced, but I think you see that a lot of people are adaptive in this environment, despite some of the things that we've seen.
I actually have a question. First of all, Beverly, thanks for coming back and doing this again. I was there in February of last year, and it was a very different seminar last year than it is this year, but you did a great job. One of the things that we've been noticing recently across a couple different industries is that people are not moving as much as they were, even I would say before the election this year. So the quit rate was the highest it had been pre-COVID, but because unemployment was so low, all the movement was happening. People were moving when they got a better offer, whether it was a better environment, better money, a better package altogether. But across several different industries in the last, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks, we have countered again, and just have noticed that people are not shifting, even for better situations, including a better culture. So I'm just curious if anyone else has kind of seen this. And Beverly, in times where you have seen people not shifting as much, have you learned anything that can help any of us, land that right fit?
Yeah, let me take one of the questions before others share. What's going through my mind is, why are people choosing not to move? So you're saying, maybe a better offer, maybe a better culture. I think some of it is caution, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. But I would hope that a lot of it is because they trust their leadership. And, engagement with a business for me, and I'm speaking very personally now, is not about what I get paid. It's about how that company makes me feel. It's about how my values align with that company. I was doing some teaching this morning at eTown and talking about, values and of course the students are all so young, they sort of looked at me as though I was crazy, which I probably am. But I was talking about the .com era, and suddenly all these .com companies came up, and it was, thousands of companies came and everyone was jumping into .com. And I never wanted to work in a .com organization, because my ethics and my values are not aligned with the ethics and values of some of those companies. And I think that's really important. I've stuck around at Armstrong for 32 years because I believe what the company stood for. So I think that a lot of engagement, it's hard to put actually a dollar value on it, Valonda, really, But I think the way, it's back to that quote, the way people make you feel is not often all about the pay and benefits. It's about, am I recognized? Do they appreciate me? Can I make a difference? Does this work for my family?
Excellent point, Beverly. Is there anybody else who wants to chime in with an experience or a question?
Can I make a comment to what Beverly just said to help translate it for some business owners?
Yeah.
Beverly, I think what you said is so key. So if it's a, say you have the right person, you know you want them, you feel like you've given them a good package and they're still hesitant. I think if I understand what you're saying, you said it's about trust with leadership. So if they have not had enough face time with leaders that will be impactful to their experience as an employee, they may be more hesitant. So if you find people aren't shifting, are they getting enough time with the person that's going to be their supervisor, the head of the department, you know, and have those people engaged at the right, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, the right amount of time or connection, so that person says, this is secure, but I'm not a fan of it. But this doesn't just look like more money and a fun place to work. This looks like people who will engage with me and help me move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely agree on that. I'm going to, before people start popping off, because we're almost at 11:30, I'm going to launch a poll, but I wanted to make a couple of comments while you fill the poll out. It's 2 quick questions so that we can give some feedback to SCORE. So that is up. But I wanted to, my personal observation, and Beverly, you hit this point home over and over and over again, is that COVID has really emphasized the fact that we need to look at our employees on a personal basis. Who are they as individuals and how do we relate to them? And it does go back to, it's not just money. It's not just the benefits. There are people that have left really high paying jobs because they just couldn't they didn't want to deal with giving part of themselves for something just for the money when that wasn't really who they were. You know, with COVID, it became so personal because you're talking about a potential infection that you could bring home to your family, to your loved ones, to your own self. And people then became very personal in some of their decisions, where in the past, they might have been able to accommodate because it didn't affect their household quite so deeply. This became so personal. What it did do as well is it elevated the idea that we have to look at that balance between the individual and their family and those needs, and making sure that they understand that they are important and valued, but there's a give and take between what they have to give up to work and what you need to give up to maintain them and have that balance. There are definitely going to be people who take advantage of that. There are going to be people who don't really pay attention to that, but for the most part, it is huge to remember that these aren't just a name on a paper, but these are individuals that are making a million decisions behind the scenes, regardless of what you see. And you don't want to lose them for that reason because you didn't listen carefully enough or understand maybe why they were, you know, if they're coming in late every morning, why is it? Can you accommodate that somehow, or do you have to go strictly by the rules? Or, you know, it's become very personal. And tapping into that whole personal thing, we have all been in Zoom meetings where you have seen people's homes and their children and their dogs and their spouses, and that's the other side of how personal this has become. But it has really illuminated something that many of us should have been paying attention to in the past. Many were paying attention to, but that is that we are definitely should be dealing on a personal basis. Even if you have 500 employees, you've got to figure out each of your team leaders, how they can carry that thought process down to their groups as well. Any final words from anybody else? All right, so we thank you all for coming out today. Appreciate all of your input, Beverly and Catherine, for doing the behind the scenes slides management there. Certainly a huge shout out to SCORE, incredible group of individuals. We are so blessed to have them working with us. Great comments in the chat. They go to you, Beverly. And if you didn't know, SCORE is the number in Lancaster-Lebanon is the #1 chapter in the United States. we don't ever take that for granted. We have a tremendous amount of resources at our fingertips that are brought to us in presentations like this. So thank you all. I hope you all have a great day. Stay safe tomorrow with the bad weather coming in.